Hey, welcome back. Let's go ahead and finish up talking about customizing your company file. This is actually part 2 of section 2. Let's go back down to reminders. I'm going to click the pencil icon. There's a couple of options that you want to be familiar with in here. You have the ability to set up invoice reminder emails. For an example, if your customer is late paying an invoice, or you just need some reason that you want to remind your customer to pay that invoice, then you can go ahead and either use the standard message, or you can go ahead and edit the one that you see down here, and you'll see it just basically says, this is a reminder we haven't received your payment yet. You do have the ability to insert a placeholder, which basically means that anywhere in here you can put in the company name or the invoice number, and that would actually be a merged transaction is what they call it. It'll pull from QuickBooks that information. You can email yourself a copy, and you can go ahead and save this when you're done. You also have options for online delivery down here at the bottom. You'll see these are email options for all of your sales forms. Your options for this will be when you actually email your sales form over to your customer, do you want to have a short summary show up in the email or show the full details in the email? You can also attach it as a PDF right here, and some additional options you have is if it's an online invoice, you can actually set it up for HTML, or if you want it to show up in plain text, but you probably want to leave it online invoice. And then click Save. And the last one I want to mention at the bottom here are statements, and I'll go ahead and show you those options. A statement goes out at the end of the month, and basically it starts with the balance from the prior month. It shows all of the transactions that month and then what the customer owes at that point. It's really a gentle reminder for your customer to go ahead and pay you. Statements are not mandatory, but they certainly do help when you're trying to collect money. You'll notice that when you print statements, you have an option to list each transaction on a single line or list each one including all the details on that particular one. You can also show the aging table at the bottom of the statement, and what that means is it will have a field that says 1 to 30 days, another one says 31 to 60, and another says 61 to 90, and that way your customer will know where they fall in that particular aging table. I'm going to go ahead and hit Save. And those are your options that happen to be under the sales. Let's look at the options for expenses. Expenses are things you have to pay, bills that come in the mail that you have to pay, for example. Your options are to show item table on expense and purchase forms. You can track expenses and items by customer, make expenses and items billable, and default bill payment terms. Make expenses and items billable. Let me just tell you what that means real quick. If you have to purchase a product or a service and you want to make sure that you invoice your customer so you can get reimbursed for it, instead of just manually putting those receipts in the car or keeping them on your desk, QuickBooks will remember those expenses. And when you're ready to invoice the customer, you can just pull them in. You also have the ability to use the purchase order system, so if you don't use purchase orders, you might decide to turn this off. Also, you have this option called messages at the bottom. This is a default message that will be sent when you send purchase orders. I'll go ahead and open that one so you can see the default message. You can also edit this to say anything you'd like, and then make sure you save it when you're done. The next tab on the left says Payments. This would be customers paying you. There's a couple things you can do. One is, if you want, you can sign up with QuickBooks to receive payments quicker by going through this little service QuickBooks has that's very similar to the way PayPal or Zelle might work. You just sign up for it. If you want to learn more, you can click here, and that way you can actually email an invoice to a customer, for example. They can click a button right there and pay you right then and there. QuickBooks will automatically be updated once you're paid from your customer. If you already have some sort of existing account with Intuit, for example, they have something called GoPayment or Merchant Services, you can connect it to your QuickBooks as well right here, and this is where you connect. And the last option says advanced. There's several things here I'll just mention briefly. If you want to have the first month of your fiscal year start maybe in September, you can actually go ahead and change this. It's going to default to January, make it correspond with your real existing start of your fiscal year. You might have a different date for the beginning of your income tax year, so you can go in and change those. Your accounting method is set for accrual. When you run reports, you can run them on an accrual basis or cash basis. Accrual basically means that as soon as you invoice, it shows up as income whether the customer has paid you or not. As soon as you enter a bill, it will show up as an expense whether you've paid it or not. If you change this to what they call a cash basis, you will only show the income once you receive the money from the customer, or you'll only show the expense once you actually spend that money. I want to mention closing the books as well, because this is an option that you'll want to think about. In real life accounting, what happens is you close the books at the end of the month and you close the books at the end of the year. And what that means is if you want to make a change in a closed period, you can't do it. You need to make an offsetting entry in the current period. Your books are not closed automatically in QuickBooks. It doesn't remind you anything. So if you want to close them, you have to come here. You'll be able to go in and you'll be able to tell QuickBooks that you do want to close the books, and then you can set a closing date. Let's say you set it for December 31 of 2019. That means that after you are working in the next year, but you see a change you want to make in 2019 prior to December 31, you're not going to be able to change it. I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of that. We talked a little bit about tax forms earlier. You want to make sure you keep that one. Also, the chart of accounts. I know you haven't seen it yet, but basically everything in QuickBooks will run through this chart of accounts. And currently, they do not have general ledger numbers. They're just a list, alphabetical, per each type. If you want to turn on general ledger numbers, you can turn them on right here. Also, you have some options for the markup income account, and we'll address that a little bit later. Let me mention real quick the track classes and the track locations. Locations means if you have different physical locations for your business, you can turn this option on, and every transaction that you work in, you can choose which location you want that to go to. Classes is very similar, except it's not really locations. Think about this. Let's say that you happen to have two different divisions of your company. You might use those for your class list, and everything you do, make sure you pick the correct option from the list. There's some things about forms where you can have it pre-fill automatically apply payments, things like that. You might want to look through that at some point. A project would be like a job-related activity. You'll notice that you have the ability to organize all of those job-related activities in one place, and that is turned on. You're also viewing QuickBooks in the business view. There is an option to go ahead and also see this in what they call the accountant view. Time tracking. If you want to be able to track the time that you or your employees spend working on different projects or jobs, you have the ability to do that. You can also come down and change the currency. There's some date options and things like that all the way down here. That means there's a lot of options in here that you can go through and set. You're going to want to look through these. You don't have to get them all right away, but at some point if you want to set these, you just come back in and make all these changes. I'm going to go ahead and close that with the X at the top right, and that's going to take me back to the dashboard. Let's go ahead and now move over to section 3, and I'll show you how to manage users.